Welcome to Fresh Off the Boat. In today's podcast, I'm delighted to be chatting with Mehul Banka. He's a student I've known since 2014. He grew up in Calcutta, went to La Martiniere, and also chose to go to Yale-NUS College in Singapore. To be honest, he didn't have many choices. His parents had met me and they said, the only country we can see him going to away from home is Singapore. Otherwise, he has to be in India. Luckily, it all worked out, and I visited YNC too during the time he was around. Just love the fact that you settled in so well. But yes, I believe that you settled in well. But what was the real story like? How was it going from Calcutta to Singapore and going to a liberal arts college, which was so new back then?
Right. I wish I'd known better what a liberal arts education is going to be like. Um, so I basically just read their webpage and had some idea like, okay, you're going to do a little bit of philosophy, you're going to do a little bit of literature. It's like, okay, I guess I'll be like doing all of these random things and then it's going to come together and like I'll take a major at some point and specialize in that. But that's really not what I found liberal arts to be like at YNC. There's so much more, and it's not like once you choose your major towards. So I chose urban studies, for example. It's not like once you choose your major that you let go of every other aspect. Like even in your major, everything just keeps flowing into each other. Like any problem that you have, you analyze it from like five different perspectives, and that's when I started understanding what liberal arts can be like. Um, yeah, and like you can apply that to basically any example. Like if you have say a Costco ball, um, you can analyze it from like a science point of view and think about how spheroids roll on surfaces, or you can like get in a philosophy point of view and say that okay, if I paint this Costco ball blue, is it still the same Costco ball? You can get like sociological point of view and be like, okay, how does this Costco ball relate to gender and how gender plays out in South Asia? Or you can even have like a political science view where you think about how cricket is creating soft power for India, and it's just yeah, the possibilities are
Yes.
limitless, and that's something I had no idea about. I was just like, okay, I'll learn all of these things in like silos, but never actually thought of them coming together. And you're right, I'm super grateful for it. As for going
Thanks. Yeah.
in,
Mhm.
yeah,
Yeah, going in. Yeah, let us know. What else did you expect or
um,
experience?
going in, I don't think I had too many expectations. I was very aware that all my expectations were from movies that I was watching. I knew they weren't realistic, but still, like, those were my expectations going in. Like, this will be the frat house, this will be the jocks and the nerds and all the stereotypes, all the cliques that you can think of. Um, Yeah, and I went there and I saw all of that in person, but then it just didn't feel as romanticized as when you watch it in a movie. Um, but I think nevertheless, I was always just super excited about everything. Um, that's how my friends described my first year for me. They said that I had no idea what I was doing. I was just doing everything and I was jumping at everything. So I remember my first semester, I joined like 7 to 10 student organizations. I was in the newspaper. I was in some like two entrepreneurial clubs. There was one impact investing club. There was one just investing club. So a lot of things, and obviously you can't do all of them. So within the first 3 weeks, I had to drop out, and still I was like going through all my classes, super excited, and like saying hi to everyone. Which, in hindsight, I should have conserved some of that energy. But yeah, yeah,
That's yeah, I think wise reflections for sure. Uh, it was a new school back then. It still is relatively new. Uh, what was the whole pioneering spirit uh, going around at that time, and how was the admin, everyone else, teaching assistants, even RAs, involving students, 18, 19-year-olds, to sort of grow the whole campus out, and also academics, not just the social life, but also the academics.
right. I think that is actually one of the fantastic points about my school. So I was the third batch that joined it in 2015. Now they have like some 7 batches already studying there. Um, and I think that spirit is still there, that pioneering spirit is still there, which plays out in like the tiniest of ways. So any decision that the college makes, I think students have such a large say in it. So this one time we were discussing the public space policy for the entire college. Uh, so what is allowed in public, what is not allowed in public, because Singapore has certain laws that you have to abide um, with respect to protest or like art, freedom of speech. And we are like this random bunch of 800,000 students from all over the world, not necessarily having as much context about Singapore, versus like the administration who's like from their super expertise in that area, but still they involve us to the extent that we can actually change policies. And it has happened like time and time again with just about anything students are involved. Um, Sometimes at YNC we do take it for granted, but I think anyone would have.
Super.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
What about the academic choices that you had to make? Who knew that you'd be graduating with a urban studies major? I don't know how decided you were, but economics was also a minor you chose to do.
Hmm,
What were the influences along the way? Special professor relationships, classes, peers,
right.
seniors, projects that help you decide what you wanted to study.
So I think it started with this was again my first year. Like I said, I was super excited kid. So I was in the dining hall. I just got my lunch outside, and I found a place to sit out. And just then, like a professor walks up, she's like, "Can I sit with you?" And I think this was my first semester, in fact. So I didn't know what's normal, what's not normal in this college. Like, okay, it's probably super normal for professors to have lunches with their students every day. Like, yeah, sure. So she sits down and we start talking about random stuff. I ask her about her classes and her research, and she tells me she's doing this research on water politics, and then takes great pains to explain what water politics means. And turns out it's in Delhi and Bombay. Can you hear me? Your screen froze
Yeah,
again.
yeah, all good.
Okay. Yeah. And turns out it's in Delhi and Bombay. So I get even more intrigued and I keep asking her questions. And like our lunch is done and it's already been 1 hour. Everyone's gone out. They've gone back to their other classes. Um, and then she asked me, in fact, like, would you like to sit in on one of my classes just to see what it's like since you seem so interested? And being the excited kid I was like, yeah, for sure, let's do it. The next thing I know, I'm sitting in her class. I'm completely blown away by what she's teaching. And this is an urban studies class because we're talking about water, sanitation, all of that. Completely blown away by that. I end up taking her class next semester. And the next thing I know, I just have like my palette full of urban studies classes and I have no choice but to major in it.
That's amazing. And I'm sure urban studies does require you to study and explore and step out of the classroom.
Oh, yeah,
So,
for
so
sure.
how did that work? Did you
Uh,
take up study abroad or opportunities to intern and things like that?
Yeah, I think there was this 1 year that urban studies really, really pushed me out of the classroom. Um, and this was beginning of my third year. So throughout that year in 2017, there was this 1 week lab. We call them Learning Across Boundaries, so lab, uh, that took us to San Francisco. And during the lab, what we had to do was like each day there'll be two neighborhoods that are chosen, and you walk around with a paper pen, and you try to map whatever you find interesting. So like my theme for the day can be sounds that I hear around this neighborhood, and try to map down the sound and make sense of it, analyze it somehow, and bring it back. Or like we would interact with activists, or we would interact with people who curated museums there. And the entire focus was to understand how San Francisco had become San Francisco, or like the small pockets within it. It was completely fantastic. I think just understanding that there's so much information around us that is so easily accessible. Like you don't necessarily need to focus on books and articles. Even walking down, you can learn so much. Was quite amazing. And then that same year, I applied for a semester abroad. Um, it was a crazy semester abroad. I don't know if I've told you about this.
No, no, actually, go ahead. Love to hear.
It was crazy because it's this program called International Honors Program. And I did it from an urban studies perspective. So you can choose your perspective while going in. And basically, what they do is for that entire semester, they take you to four different places and like you just do urban studies stuff. Um, so we went to New York, we went to Sao Paulo, Cape Town, and Ahmedabad. And in each place, like across the 13 weeks that the semester was, like they'll have a certain theme. Like this week, we're going to analyze heritage. So you analyze heritage from like a cultural point of view. You analyze heritage from an urban planning point of view. You analyze heritage through. I actually forgot what the third one was. From
Got
a
it.
politics point of
But
view.
also just looking at the interconnections between not just city dwellers, but all kind of stakeholders,
Yeah.
and even the environment and the science and all of it. Sounds amazing. Uh, so when you went deeper into it, did you have to work on a senior year thesis? How does one graduate in a major like urban studies?
Right. So for now, you do have to write a senior year thesis, and it's like a 10,000 word paper, and you get a year to do it. You get a supervisor, and generally, like you develop quite close relationships with the supervisor. So you meet once every week or once in every 2 weeks. Um, and it's really close quarters for you to be working with someone who's an expert in that field. And you even get a say in choosing which supervisor you want, like some say in choosing what supervisor you want. So if you find someone who you really think you connect with and whose style of research and academia you want to get into more, like push for it and you'll get there. So I think that's quite amazing. And another thing that is happening side by side, uh, so this isn't done yet, but I guess if this podcast is for people who are thinking about applying to YNC, there is some kind of push for there to be no senior thesis and instead you do an internship or some kind of professional development thing, and that should count towards the grades as well. So if you're there and you hear buzzing words with, okay, maybe we should scrap the thesis, and you want that too, you can push for it. Being the pioneering college that we are, we might just go with it.
Excellent. I'm sure urban studies is a major which many people back home would be confused. Having known your family, running a business, how is it like explaining to people back home what you actually study and what kind of jobs can you get? Where can you go with this in the future?
Yeah, I think I don't have an answer to that. I don't know how I explain it to people. At some point, they get frustrated and they're like, okay, fine, you do what you want. Or I get frustrated and I leave. So, yeah.
Yeah. So, what about this in terms of
Um,
the future plans? Are you looking at academics or even research possibilities? And of course, in my view, urban studies is
right.
not in my view. I think the whole world needs specialists like you to figure out which problems first to solve, and then why we should be focusing on those, and what resources we need to allocate. So I think it's fantastic that you've studied what you have.
Right.
So go ahead, tell us what are the different paths you're thinking of next.
Well, actually, a lot that you can do with a major. Um, I do think a master's is generally advisable in my field, but like I'm not doing a master's for the next 2 years, I think, right now. And I still think there's lots of scope. So you can get into architecture if you choose to specialize that during your college years. You can get into urban planning, which is like figuring out how roads are laid out or how land use in a city works or how a city relates to villages. Um, you have that option. You can also do like small scale urban design programs. So I have friends who are designing parks, who are designing like building common spaces, all of that. There's lots of possibilities actually. Trying to think of more. I have friends who like just taken urban studies as a topic area and who are doing arts related things. So they've taken like whatever questions that looking at a place from an urban studies point of view comes up with. So like housing, for example, and how different people struggle with rent. And they've made like plays out of it. They've made like a photography series. So I think, yeah, I think possibilities are limitless.
Mhm. You also did
Although I do want to
economics
tell
as a
you that,
minor. Yeah, go ahead. You can also, if you can
yeah,
combine your answer with your interest in economics and see the
okay.
interlinkages between urban studies.
I mean, definitely there's lots of interlinkages because for any sort of urban planning, the main thing that you need is data. And to analyze data, one of the best tools that we have right now, or at least quantitative data, the best tools we have right now is economics. So if you learn about how the different types of regressions work, and you can actually come up with findings about, I don't know, how planting 10 trees in a lane has positive results on XYZ. Like that's super useful to urban planning because based on that data analysis, you can make decisions. Otherwise, there's no use of it. Um, what I was saying earlier was that I think that the way that YNC does its courses, being a liberal arts college, they don't necessarily focus on you specializing in anything. Um, so even with urban planning, I think I must have taken like 2 classes or 3 classes on it throughout my 4 years. And everything else was how do I approach urban planning from all these different angles. Um, so yeah, I think they don't focus on specialization and they actually pride themselves on us being generalists because we can approach one problem from so many different angles and try to see how everything fits together, which I think actually is super important for urban planning, like urban planning specifically, because land is so limited that you can't just go in with one mindset of like, okay, I want to do this and I have the land available, so let me just do it. If you actually are able to analyze that how that piece of land can be utilized from all these different perspectives and then come up with something, I think it's far more holistic.
Well said. I really wanted to go back in time a little bit about the application process and the admissions at YNC and what trends are you seeing coming in? Every year we do have one student who chooses to go, and it's really delightful to catch up with them every once in a while. Uh, so tell me about what you think worked in your case, or in retrospect, how naive or whatever goof ups you made, but you were still sort of accepted, and how selective has it become over the years,
Right,
and what do you think in general they're looking for?
right. Um, I think selectivity is still the same as it was during my year. Uh, they might have increased the number of students accepted each year. So earlier in my batch, I think was around 180. Now it's around 200, 220. Um, but that's like 40 students, so I don't know if it's going to really change the numbers so drastically. Uh, as for applications, it's really difficult to tell. So I also have a friend who was in my batch and now is working in the admissions team in Yale-NUS. Um, and like I've spoken to her about this, and she says that there's no set guidelines for what's going to get a student in. Um, like each year they think about the kind of batch that they want to create. So like a lot of people say, and these are all like urban myths in our college. So they said that the first year they were looking for leaders because it was the first year, and you need people to start up things. You need people who are willing to venture out a bit more. So that's the kind of students they were looking for in the applications. That's the kind of screening process they had. Whereas in my year, in the third year, they're like, okay, right now we've set up enough like institutions and enough like student clubs and everything. So maybe we need people who are better with follow through of things, or who are just like more like, okay, we'll get this thing done rather than ideating on things. And yeah, these are still myths, but
Right.
I can see how these things play out in the different personalities with different batches. So I don't know if there's a set thing that YNC looks for. Um, I think the one thing that definitely stands out is that almost everyone I've met is incredibly curious. They're incredibly curious about everything that they see. So, like, conversations can last for hours if you don't have anywhere else to go. Because, like, even if my specialty is urban studies, someone who's from, I don't know, a biotech background can ask me questions for like hours on end and would still be really interested. I don't know if that helps in any
Yeah,
way.
no, definitely. I'm going to switch gears and get to know you a little bit better. uh, so the question, which is like a rapid fire round: which three adjectives describe your strengths?
Okay. I just said curious, so it'll sound non humble if I say curious now. Curious. Um, what else? I think I'm playful, and I also want to say bold, but these are all like good adjectives. I feel like I'm making myself
You're
out to
allowed
be
to. That's
bigger
what
than
you
I
want. You
am.
just need 3 words and you've said it.
But
So
yeah,
great.
okay,
Next one is
okay.
if you can reflect back on an embarrassing moment or a mistake that you regret or a failure that you really damp about, what pick any one or two, and what are the reflections? What learnings do you have from those?
Right. What do you think about this one? I mean, I'm sure I've done so many things wrong, but if you ask me if I would change anything, I can't think of like one particular point that I would be like, okay, this should not have happened. Um,
Sure. So we can
yeah, I think at
also.
one point, like I don't want to characterize this as a failure. It was kind of like a distressing point. Um, so for like the first 2 years, I had done a lot of uh, classes in my own major, and I had like a very set path of um, like this is where I'm going to go down, and like 4 years from now, I'll be like this and top researcher in urban studies or urban planning, and then go for a job in that direction. But at some point, I started developing all of these different interests. So I started taking classes in like fiction writing or drawing processes or political science, and it was just like a big mashup of things. And I knew I had a direction earlier, but suddenly exposing myself to so much, it really confused me for a while. Confused me about um, what I want to do and my next career move and all of that. I don't regret it. Like when I was facing it, I regretted it a lot. I was like, damn it, why did I do all of this? I should have just stuck to what I knew. Um, yeah. So while I was going through that phase, I was like, shit, what am I going to do now? Like, obviously, some of my career options are closed down because I had so many other interests that I haven't like developed my proficiency in this one specific place. Um, but having come out of it, like I think I have so much more perspective on things than if I hadn't gone through that 1.5 years of just trying everything I possibly can.
Great. One final question, rapid fire round, is about the COVID era. If tomorrow you just wake up and everything is kind of normalized and the virus suddenly vanishes, there's no fear, what are the few things you would love to do or new things that you would love to do and not necessarily go back to the old?
So I've already thought about this. I want to go scuba diving and I want to travel in the Northeast. Um, I would immediately do those.
Great. About the first job that you took up in Pune, it's kind of a social impact
Hmm.
organization. And what is the area of work that they did at that time? What is it called again?
Right.
Shelter.
So
And
it's an open development. Sorry,
what is the name of the organization?
Shelter Associates. So they're based in Pune and they work in slums all across Maharashtra. And it's an urban development firm that does two things. It does work in sanitation and it does work in housing. Um, so what they do basically is like they have this super rigorous data collection mechanism. So they go to like each slum household in like the 7 cities that they work in. And this includes some of the Bombay slums. So it's quite amazing the number of households that they have to visit. And they collect data from these houses and they create GIS maps. And using that data and using the maps, they figure out, like, they get data from the municipal corporations. So they lay out the drainage lines on the maps and they figure out, like, which houses don't have individual toilets right now and where is it possible to give them individual toilets based on the drainage line or based on how much the corporation is going to spend. And the same process is repeated for housing. Like you see whether or not it's possible to develop um, like a 4-story building in a particular slum based on the data that you have. Because like there's certain restrictions about okay, if you are in this place before 2001, only then will you get a new house under the government scheme. So like making sure that you're not going in and disrupting people's houses, uh, and like only benefiting a few, but trying to find those places where it is possible to do all of these programs.
It sounds
So yeah, and my
fascinating.
role in
And what
that,
was your role exactly? Go ahead.
yeah, my role in that was very weird. My role in that was a researcher, but I basically created that position for myself. Um, yeah, so they didn't have necessarily have a researcher or like a research department within that organization, and it's a decently big organization, like 70 people there, but they were more into like implementation and doing it as fast as possible. And my role as a researcher was to researcher and documentation person is to look at all their projects, see what's working well, see what's not working well, document all of that, report it to someone. There was a lot of like just feeling it around and figuring out what I need to do here. And I think it was actually really nice because it gave me a lot of independence to like come up with projects that I think are useful for the firm, and then have like this constant back and forth with the people heading the firm and being like, I really think this is useful and I think you should try it. And then they tell me their reasons for why they haven't done it yet. And then we like refine it. And at some point we'd be like, okay, this is the middle ground that I think is best for us. Um, so yeah, I think, yeah, that was my
Great.
role.
That's definitely fascinating, making impact through research and using real data to help slum dwellers sort of get access to sanitation. So I think there are so many themes that we've touched upon in this conversation, and
Mhm.
it's been fascinating to just observe and listen to you and get a sense of your journey. It definitely seems that you are living a life of the mind. You want to try new things, and you don't regret that you wanted to learn so many things. Uh, what are the things that you are now following, like the influencers, people who you want to read more about or read their work? uh, what are the few
Mm,
one, two, or three uh, resources or people that keep your brain nicely fed even out of school?
right. Um, so I think the last book that I read that was super impactful was Naomi Klein's "This Changes Everything." Have you heard of it by any chance?
I've read her shock doctrine, which is about
Okay.
capitalism, and especially, I mean, her shock doctrine book is very relevant to the pandemic right now because it goes and
Yes.
proves how economists and politicians sort of go hand in hand and sort of make drastic changes when there is a shock like the pandemic or an earthquake or a Katrina and so on and so forth. What is this book about?
So this one is about the climate movement all across the world, and it talks about like different fossil fuel industries and their points of extraction and the protests that happen around these points. And there's this developing, she calls it a blockadia. So there's this developing like movement against these fossil fuel industries. And she basically traces down why the work that Blockadia does is super important, how it's operating, like what are the different parameters that they use to push their messages and to push the action forward. Um, Not so much about drawback, but I think the basic point of the book is that it's motivated so many people I know to take climate change more seriously. Like before this, I knew about it and I knew it's important, but I did not understand the urgency of it till I read This Changes Everything. So that's the last book I read. Um, right now, what am I reading? There's this one urban theorist that I really like. His name's David Harvey. So I've downloaded his book. I haven't started reading it. I'm reading this other book again on town planning, and it's called Who's Your City? Um, and the book is about like how it's important not just to decide who you are with for the rest of your life and what you're doing for the rest of your life, but also deciding where you want to do it. Because that's a question that the author claims that like we forget asking most of the time. So he has some interesting arguments. I don't fully agree with them yet, but we'll see. So that's another book I'm
Fascinating. Yeah, I'd
reading.
love to get the names of the authors in the books and share it with listeners. So thank you, Mehul, for having this very genuine, authentic conversation with me and also the people who are listening. I'm sure would know that you're a no halls bar kind of person. You sort of are spontaneous and speak your mind on so many issues. So all the best, and looking forward to following your work and maybe even
Thank
designing
you.
something for our students with you very soon. It'll be fascinating to connect the
For sure.
dots with whatever
Yeah,
you've
of course.
learned and compress it into something high
Recollecting my
schoolers
college.
could gain. So yeah, thanks. Look forward to seeing you again.
Thank you.